Hello everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm popping by with another version of our wreath card. So this was the card that I made in my previous video, and we're going to do another version with the clematis and just change it a little bit. So I'm using the same size card, so I'm using a piece of Pink Frog Super Smooth card 300 GSM, and it's 6.5 inches square. A piece of black card like before, 6 3/4 inches square, and then my card blank 7 inches square. So exactly the same size card size that we used in the previous video. And I'm going to use the same item that I drew around as well. So I'm going to stand up because I can just see over the camera then. And as I did before in the previous video, I'm just going to add a pencil line just as a guide. So I've got my pencil line. You can draw around a saucer or anything like that, but I've just got a pencil line on there that you can erase once you've finished. So what I'm going to do then is, let's move this out of the way. I'm going to cut this out of cotton. We're going to do it out of paper. I'm then going to cut the same circular shape out of paper. So let's just, but I'm not actually going to cut the circle out. I'm actually going to cut it so that I've got the aperture. Now I've left my scissors here. My desk is in such a mess because I've actually been doing, believe it or not, I know it's snowing for some people now. We've missed the snow. We just had a dusting. But I've actually been decluttering the garden and filling the skip with things that have rusted and the bottom of the pots have fallen out. And so I've literally been decluttering the garden, decluttering the house. So my craft room, every time I make a project, I normally tidy up, but what I've been doing is making a project and then rushing out to add some more things to this skip. So my desk has actually got lots of projects half done. Not good. I normally like to clear away as I go along. So what I'm doing is I've drawn around the same shape. You can draw around a saucer just to create an aperture. And that aperture means that I can sort of make sure that nothing colour-wise that I add comes outside of those lines. So we're going to add the aperture just over the circle that I have drawn on the card, just so that you can see this. Let's just leave that there. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take, nobody knows, which colour are you going to take first, Tracy? I'm going to take the dark colour, you know, like I do with my pencils and I go dark to light. I'm going to do it that way this time. Now, my brayer, if I wiped it, I would still get some purple off there from the previous card. I don't need to wipe it though, because it's got purple on there, and I'm using Wilted Violet. Now, Wilted Violet is quite a strong colour, as I mentioned in my previous video as well. Let me move these backgrounds out of the way. So I'm using Wilted Violet, and as you can see, I've got lots of ink on there. So what I'm going to do, let's move my blending tools out of the way. Let's pick up a spare piece of card. And if you're purchasing anything from the website at the moment, there is free UK postage on your basket on shopping over £10, and then you get free shipping. So I'm going to take this, and you can see that ink is really juicy, really juicy. So what I'm going to do is use this spare piece of card and just bray the first layer of ink on there. And then I'm going to come to my circle, and I'm just going to bray over the copy of paper. Now, to be honest, you could cut it out of card, but I've just done it out of copy of paper because it's just as easy. And because I've got extra paper around the outside, that means that the rest of my card is covered up. Now, you can see that I've got lots of lines on this piece that I added, the ink that I added before. But don't worry about that. You can just create another background with that. But I'm just braying any excess onto here. And what I'm going to do then is take the wilted violet again. Now I know that it brayers out quite nicely. I'm going to take it, and I can take the neat colour and just go over, because I know it brayers quite nicely. And what I'm doing is I'm braying over and over and over and lifting and flicking that colour. Now, if you want to, you can use your blending tools if you wish to add the colour, but it'll sort of be thicker in layers of colour and slightly different application than with your brayer. So what I'm going to do then is just take off the excess ink just onto this spare piece of card. And it doesn't bother me that this has got lines, because I can add some water and that will diffuse those lines. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take my shaded lilac. Now this is a very sort of pale colour, and for me it's very well used. And what I'm going to do is sort of lift and flick, lift and flick, lift and flick, and keep braying that colour just over the circle. Lift and flick, like a little wheelie. And the more you keep going over that, let's just place this back over. And if you find that it's moving, let's grab some low tack tape. If you find your paper's moving a little bit, just grab, and then your low tack tape sticks to your paper that flies all over the place. Hang on a minute. And then you're getting a little bit of a mess like me. Right, just take that over there. Let's try that again. Let me make sure that that is lined up. That's better. I was faffing too much, that's why. And let's just put some across the top onto the non-stick craft sheet, just so that it doesn't move as much. Tracy can't speak today. It's Sunday and I can't speak. What am I like? Right. So just like I would with the blending tools, I'm going to go back over just as if it was like pencils. You know, when you're adding layers of colour, but I'm adding a little bit less ink. And I'm just going to brayer that over. And the more I keep layering that colour, it just keeps adding that texture. Now, I'm going to make sure that all that colour's off. Now, because I'm going to go to the cracked pistachio, let me show you. Wrong lids on wrong ink pads. I didn't bring any brain cells today. So, you think all that colour's off there. But if I grab a wipe and wipe over my brayer, can you see how much colour comes off? I can actually wipe that water onto my card, and I'd end up picking more of that colour up from the card. So it proves how much of the colour is still on that brayer. So before I go to the cracked pistachio, it's important that I wipe that because we don't want to create mud. So I'm going to take the cracked pistachio. And again, this is a paler colour. And I'm starting over here and then coming. It's still moving. What are you like, Tracy? You know why? This is why when you do things live and you do them properly live and you don't edit out, you can see where I go wrong. And I'll tell you why. Because you want this to stay still. Then you look for your low tack tape. You want this to stay still. So let's just add that low tack tape to there. There we go. Low tack tape to there. Then place this over. Oh, goodness sake. Tracy, I can hear you all giggling at me, faffing around. There we go. There we go. How many times can you layer a piece of copier paper? 50 times by the looks of it. So I'm going to take a little bit more of that cracked pistachio. Now you just make sure that you could turn your card round to make it easier as well, but just make sure that you use low tack tape just to keep that in place. And can you see I'm braying over continually? And because the cracked pistachio is much lighter, I can go in with more layers of that colour. It's a much lighter layer of colour. And flick just as you add the layers of colour. So there's hardly any colour on there. So what I'm going to do then is just go back. I don't need to clean the brayer because there's nothing on there really. I'm going to go back to the shaded lilac and just add a little bit more of the shaded lilac. And now I've just got a lovely blend of colour. Let's take a look at that colour. Let's move these all out of the way. So let's take a look at our circle. Now look at our circle. Even after loads of faffing, as Tracy did. Move these out of the way. You see that lovely blend of colour. Just a beautiful, beautiful blend. And what I'm going to do, let's place that down. I'm just going to spritz from high up and just spritz that with a touch of water. We're using oxide, so that just does what we expect it to do. It reacts with water. We're using the oxides, which are a pigment dye fusion, and because of that they have an opaque element, which means that the colours layer beautifully. Let's just blot that, and we've got some nice bleaching out there. And let's just clean our area all around, just so we're not working in moisture. Aren't those colours just beautiful together? Really lovely. So what I'm going to do is grab the clematis, which I didn't leave out. I was a good girl and I tidied it away. I'm going to use the clematis like I did in the previous video. I'm going to use... Did I leave the other one out? Always tidy up. I'm then going to use the fern, which as you can see is not in here. It's still on my desk. So I've got the fern, which is TE3. Let me see if I've still got the packaging. Yep. So we've got TE3, which is the fern. We're going to use that. And I'm also going to use TE27, which is the moth, just to add that little leaf bit there. But because I've got those, let's move this now. Because I've got this line drawn, I've now got a guide, but I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm going to turn this just so that I can see better. So let's take the clematis once again. We'll add that to the acrylic block and we'll grab our Morning Mist VersaFine Clair. And I'm going to use, let's just take those, all my letters are falling off because it's so well used. So I'm going to add this one this way. So I want that there. So I'm going to ink with my Morning Mist. Now don't ink over your project. and ask me why I'm telling you that, because there are so many times that I've inked my stamp over my project, and of course you drop the stamp. You drop the stamp then onto your work. So just ink your stamp away. And it's, you know, better on a firm surface like that rather than in your hand. So just make sure you put it on a firm surface because it's far easier. Mainly because if you put it on a firm surface, you just add a little bit more pressure when applying that ink rather than in your hand. Let's bring this down. And I'm going to add this sort of, I'm going to faff is what I'm going to do. I'm going to add, you see, when you've got so much on your desk, you do make it difficult for yourself, Tracy. There we go. So I'm just adding this one down here. And again, this is much like we did in the previous video. So let's just add this and just give that time just to absorb onto the background. Don't be in too much of a rush. So we've got the beautiful clematis there. And then got loads of bits all over there. I'm going to add one to the top in the opposite, sort of not bang on, but around about in the opposite corner. And again, I'm going to make sure that I'm using that VersaFine Clair Morning Mist and tapping lots of ink onto that stamp on a flat surface, not like I was doing before, holding it, because when you saw when I was holding it, you haven't got the same stability. So just make sure you add your ink and you've got your stamp onto a flat surface. Lots of tapping so you get lots of ink on there, and faff a little bit like I do. You see, now this low tack tape is in the way, so let's remove that. And we want this to look a little bit different, so let's have that sort of there. There we go. So we'll have that there. And again, just give that time just to absorb onto that surface, because you've got that oxide layer on there. So you need to be aware of that you've got the oxide layer on there. So it just takes a little bit longer. And really, when you can, if you think that everything's still got a little bit of moisture in there, just give that VersaFine Clair ink a little bit of a blot, just to get, I've got no ink on there, but just so that you're aware you may need to blot that. So now we've got, so it instantly looks different than our previous one. Let's move this white paint out of the way. I've got paint everywhere. So, and then I've got my mask, as in my previous video, just like I did in the previous video. Let's just add the mask here, just made out of copier paper. And now we will grab the other part of the clematis. Let's bring in, I've got stamps everywhere, this part of the clematis here. And what we should do is not be lazy. Where's that now? Tracy can't put a stamp in the right way. Would help if I got the packaging the right way. That's better. And what I'm going to do, just while these keep falling off, just give them a white. It's just white because you've got lots of dirt on there, or I have, and that's why they fall off, because I've used them so much. So I just need to, that's the fern. Nothing else has fallen off then. Let's give this one a little bit of a white, because what happens is when you use your embossing powders and things like that, you pick a little bit of that debris up and a little bit of dirt from your fingers, so it just resticks. Wonderful, just what we want. So we'll bring this back in and we'll put that just back here again. Just add that mask back over again. I'm obviously in faffing mode today. Can't help myself. My excuse is it's Sunday and I didn't bring any brain cells. I don't know why I'm faffing so much. There we go. So I'm going to take the morning mist again, and I don't want this leaf here. I don't know whether I'm going to, shall I bother with the other floral this time? I didn't add this floral at the top here, but I might this time. We're going to add that just sort of, let's add that round about there. I often talk to myself as well, which I'm really good at. So we'll just, and we can compare the two cards because we'll put them together and show how you can make them look a little bit different. Just give that a little bit of time. There we go. Let's remove the mask. So we've then got these florals in there, and anywhere that you want to bring the sort of stems, just draw them in if you've just missed a little bit of your stems. So I'm then going to add, where am I going to add these? So let's, again, use your packaging. It does give you some idea of where things can go. So just play with the packaging a little bit. Yes, so we'll add one that side. So the packaging is ideal to use because it sort of just gives you a guide of where you're stamping everything. So it just gives a lovely guide, and you can sort of know where you're going to place things. So just give that can you see lots of tapping, not scrimping on the tapping. And then I could see that I wanted this over this side. So I'm going to place this here, like so. So by using the acetate, it sort of gives me that guide. And playing around with colour schemes and just changing it round a little bit makes it look completely different. There we go, let's just, there we go, move the mask. So you can see now that we've got this on here. Now, this area here has got less colour. This area here has got more colour, so we need to put a bit of shading to make that stand out. Not quite so much here because it's white. So you will add shading to just make that stand out a little bit more. Now, let's grab some colours. Did I leave them out? Of course I didn't. So let's grab, I don't think I left them out, did I? What colours have I got on my desk here? She says. Oh, we might have done actually. Yes, dark purple, lilac we did, and lavender. Yes, we did, and some white. We did leave the colours out, not we, the royal we. You know what I'm like. So I'm going to use the same colours as the previous card. Dark purple. This is a Prismacolor PC931. You can use any medium that you want to add some colour to your piece. That's entirely up to you. So I'm just adding. Now you can see this is here. Let me just add a little bit of white here. This is the centre of the clematis, which we will need to highlight a little bit more. So we'll need it a little bit darker just around that centre area. But you can actually do shading with your Inktense pencil, or you can use your Prisma colours just to highlight that with the darker colour. Let's do one floral at a time. So I'm adding that dark here to the sort of base of the petal, and I'm just going to add a little bit more darkness around there, just so that that stands out a little bit more, with there being a little bit of colour on that project. Now I'm going to add a little bit to the tips as well of that dark colour. So I'm going to add a little bit of that dark colour to the tips. Don't rush your colouring. Honestly, it's so worth it if you just take your time. And I don't like to rush onto several florals at the same time. I just like to do one at a time. That's just me personally. So what I'm going to do now is just add a little bit more here. And I'm just going to highlight the base of that a little bit more, just so that that stands out a little bit more. I'm then going to go to my next colour, which is Lilac PC 956. So we'll just blend into the dark colour with this mid colour. And even though my fingers are a little bit further down, I'm not pressing too hard. I'm just gently blending that in a circular motion, but I'm not pressing too hard. And I just know that if I do one floral at a time, then you can see the difference in the floral. Let's add that bit of dark there, just so that you can see the difference between one floral and the other florals. And I do like the Prisma colours have started to become my solid favourite, because me personally, I find them much easier to blend. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to use the Lavender PC 934 and blend out. Now obviously you've got this purple in the background here, so on this one, you know, you've got to do a little bit of shading and highlighting, just so that that stands out from that background. And you can do the shading, etc., and the sort of adding definition in lots of different ways, either with white pencil, white pen, Inktense grey pencil, whichever works best for you. And then I like to take the white and just blend those two colours together. And because there's so much colour underneath from the oxides, the floral doesn't take much colouring at all. But you want to add some white highlights, where are we, to the, this is because I've used, when you use wax pencil, your Posca pen picks up that wax, and therefore doesn't work straight away. I'm just highlighting the centre area there. And what I'm going to do now, the lovely Lee Mackenzie also did this on her clematis. We always talk about shading in my workshops, and you can add a little bit of Inktense pencil just around. This is Inktense, it's called Chinese ink, and you can just highlight a little bit of that clematis just around the edges here, just so that that pops a little bit more. Now, the only reason I do this is, for instance, if it's against that background, because in my first card, my background was lighter, so I didn't need to do this. Where's the... You know, I have got so much on my desk. So just grab my paintbrush, and you can see, as per normal, it is not clean. So let's just make sure that we do have a clean paintbrush. Always clean your paintbrushes. I'm just terrible. And then what we can do is just touch this grey Inktense pencil just to highlight some of this area here, just so that it just pops a little bit more. You can also add it all around. You don't need to do this unless you're adding it against a darker background. Only if you're adding it against a darker background, because it'll just make it pop. So I'm just using Inktense pencil, Chinese ink. I think it's 2030, but it's an Inktense pencil. Now you can add shading with your HB pencil if you want. It's wherever you want to sort of add a little bit more of that shading. Yes, you could stamp in black if you wanted to, but for me, the grey is just a little bit softer to go with that softer background. So it's quite nice. It just adds a little bit of shading without being too much. There we go. And then what I'm going to do is take the gel pen, the Posca paint pen, and as we did with the previous one, I'm just going to add some touches of the white, just to emphasize some of the detail. Now you hardly have to touch that. So as you can see now, on this one, it's in the light area, so it doesn't need the shading as much. So I'm going to start with the dark colour again. And this is why when you're colouring, it always depends what kind of surface that you are colouring on. It also helps if your desk is clear, which mine is definitely far from clear. And this one here. So my desk is definitely far from clear. So we've just added the first layer. Then we're going to go to the next colour. So that was PC931. This is PC956. I'm just going to blend this into the dark colour. And I can already see, because I'm on a lighter background and I've not got that purple base like I have at the top here, I need to add another layer of that colour. Whereas because I had the purple base of the oxide at the top of the card, it's not necessary. So this is my first layer of colour. Then go into the lighter colour, which is lavender, PC934, and just blending those together. Oh, I always forget one edge of one petal. Don't know why I do that. So the third colour blends in to the second colour. Now, because we're on that white card in some areas on this floral, I need to add another layer. So I'm going to add another layer of that colour. And again, I can just emphasise the centre of the clematis, with however you pronounce it. So we're just adding a little bit more depth to that clematis, like so. And again, if you wish, you can just add a little bit more depth just underneath there. Then I'm going to go to my second colour again, which is the lilac, PC956. Just blend the edges of that colour. I didn't do the dark area on here. I can tell because it's not smooth enough. There we go. And I didn't do it here either. But you really should sort of take your time when you're adding your layers of colour. Again, I didn't add the dark here. Just blend that out now. And then we'll go to our lightest colour, which is the lavender. I'm going to blend the colours with the lavender. And you can see I'm sort of leaving a little bit of an area towards the centre of the floral, just so that I can add some white, just to blend all the colours together. So then I can use my white pencil and sort of blend that out so that the last colour is blended as well. Really, you should let your card rest before you try and add any of those touches of white. Just blend out. Now you can add touches of white with your pencil if you wish, or you can do that at the end. I'm going to add the touches of white with my Posca. There we go. Let's add a little bit more here. And then if you wish, you can add some shading. So you can add a little bit of shading where the colour is, just to highlight that floral a little bit more. Just where you are onto that coloured background. So let's just wet that now. Then I can just blend this out. I'm literally just touching the surface just to wet the surface of the Inktense pencil just a little bit. Just to give that a little bit of shading. But I'm hardly touching that. There we go. Just so that you can see what we've got. And of course you can add some shading around the white area if you want. I'm trying to do it at stages because then you can decide whether you want to add that or not. So it's entirely up to you. So if I take a little bit of water, you can then add a little bit of shading. Let's add a little bit here, a little bit there. I've hardly got any water on that fine brush, but it's entirely up to you. You can add as much or as little as you want. If you add, oh, I don't know why I keep doing that. If you add a little bit more water, the shading obviously comes out a little bit further, and that is what will give you a little bit of dimension. If you just bring that out a little bit, it'll just give you a little bit of dimension to your card. Let's just remove that moisture. There we go. Now I like to add a little bit of colour, maybe to one of the smaller clematis as well, and it just needs a little touch of colour. You can sort of get away with 2 of the colours with these, with the little smaller clematis, or you can just leave it without any colour. It's entirely up to you, but I do like it with just a little bit of colour. So that we don't look like we've forgotten it. Just looks like we've remembered that as well. Let's just go around the base, and we'll colour the wrong colour, Tracy. Always watch what colour you're picking up. And if you don't like to lean on your work, just use a piece of copier paper just to lean on your work. So then you'll look at your desk like I'm doing and keep losing your Posca paint pen. I'm just going to just add a little bit of white, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of white just to the leaf and maybe the buds as well. So my husband has put the heating on, and as per normal, in this house, you're either too hot or too cold. You just can't win. It's so hot, but just so that you can see, those now stand out rather beautifully, just beautifully. So what I'm going to do then is grab stamp set TE11, which is background elements, which is, let's just grab the beautiful background stamp for TE11. And you can see I've not added any foliage yet, because I'm trying to show you stages where you can just leave it as it is if you wish. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to use the Wilted Violet Distress Oxide ink and just add that to the stamp. And I'm just going to add a little bit of stamping just here and there, just to the background. So let's just wipe that a bit. So I'm using tone on tone on this one. On the previous one I used some white, but you can make it look different each time. So I'm just adding a little bit of random stamping, and this time, in the previous one I just added it here, but we've got two florals here, so we want to make sure that those are included in the whole design. There we go, just lovely, just a bit of stamping. When you use your oxide ink, just wipe your stamp, because if you go back to that stamp with the VersaFine Clair, well then it's not going to be as crystal clear. Just beautiful. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the small fern stamp from TE3. Let's take that, and I think when I did it before I sort of tilted it that way, and I need the mask, so I'm just going to place the mask in place. There we go. And I'm going to use, where's it gone? There we go. I'm going to use Verdant. So let's take some Verdant ink. Let me add this to, I am going to faff a little bit more. I'm going to end up with ink all over me, but it is what it is. I'm going to add a little bit of the fern leaf here, and I'm then going to add second generation just here, like so. Then I'm going to ink again, and can you see I'm just sort of sticking to where the clematis actually is. I'm going to, honestly, nobody faffs like I do. I'm going to add the first generation there, and then the second generation just over the top there. So then I'm going to move the mask over to the top side. I'm going to ink the fern again. I'm going to add one of the ferns here. Maybe a little bit of the fern sort of coming out there. And obviously when I remove the mask, you will be able to see things a lot better. and I'm over stamping onto the mask. So let's just add the second generation there. So at the moment we've just got the Verdant first and second generation stamping. I'm going to take this again. Now the VersaFine Clair are permanent inks. So I'm going to take the Shady Lane. So let's take some Shady Lane. I'm just going to add the Shady Lane, first generation and second generation. And the Shady Lane again. Don't want to go too far up. First generation and second generation. So I'm not going all the way around the circle because you want it to look different to your previous card. And then in another video I'm going to show you how we can make a small wreath on a sort of 5x7 card. First generation with the Shady Lane. And then do I need a second generation there? No, because the position of the flower. Let's just place this back. That's it. And then I'm going to add one here, first generation and second generation. There we go. So we're building that up nicely. So we'll just put that back. And then I want, good grief, where did I put everything? There it is. I want the moth. So I want to use TE27, and I want to use that little bit of foliage that I've got on TE27. So let's take TE27 and the little, let me just lift that up for you, the little foliage stamp here. So I'm then going to take the Twilight, no I'm not, I'm going to take Wilted Violet. Told you I'm just making up names now, so I'm just going to take the Wilted Violet, and now I'm going to add a few of these sort of foliage pieces. I've not masked that off because I'm just going near to the floral and just adding a little bit more foliage. Now I can probably add a little bit of the second generation there. Yes, you can. The second generation is rather nice. So let's add a first generation here. Like so. And then we'll add the second generation down here. And then we'll take the first generation. I'm going to add, I like how I'm thinking to myself. It takes a lot of thought, you know. First generation. And then second generation. That can have the third generation. Just love it. How it looks completely different to the previous one. Let's remove that. So we'll place this back down here. I'll just put that one back because then I won't lose it. Just so that you can see what we have. And then I'm just going to add some touches of white just to the fern. Just add little touches of white to the fern and to the leaf, just to make that stand out a little bit more. You only need to touch it sort of with a little bit of the white. just so that you're highlighting some of those areas. I'm just picking up some of the highlights from those areas. There we go. We didn't highlight any of the clematis here, so we'll just add some of the highlights to this, just so that that pops a little bit. And let's just add a little bit to the fern. Again, the leaf areas. The white just finishes things off a little bit. Everything just sort of looks more finished. Now, we don't want to forget these little clematis as well. Just adding little touches of white. Because we don't want to forget them, because it's so easy, but just adding those little touches of white really sort of finishes things off a little bit. And then I'm going to take the little hair from TE32. So just take the hair. So we can add the little hair. And I want to stamp that in black so that it's in the foreground. Does help if you get the stamp straight. So it's entirely up to you. In the previous one, I added the hair inside here, or you can add it outside here. It's entirely up to you. I think I'm going to add my hair just in the circle here. But you can add it here as well, so that it's looking in. And I'm just going to add touches of white to the hair. Again, you will find it easier to add the touches of white if you sort of allow your ink to dry. I'm going to add a little bit of shading. He's sitting on the fern, that's absolutely fine. But we'll just add a little bit of shading as well. So just add a little bit of shading, just so he looks like he is definitely perched. And then I'm going to add the word clematis. Nobody knows where that is because I've just dumped the stamps everywhere. So I'm going to use the word clematis. There it is. I've got more ink on my hand. Let's bring this in. Just wipe my hand, and I'm going to stamp that in the nocturne, which is the black, so that that's in the foreground. It's entirely up to you where you add the clematis wording. I'm going to sort of, you see how I've got him here? I'm going to balance him a little bit with the wording sort of here on the left hand side. There we go. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of shading under that clematis word. Now you've got a card here that is single layer, and what I mean by that is it's got no dimension, it has no cut out pieces. So let's just add, to give that a little bit of shading. There we go. And you can just blend that out a little bit more. There we go. Then we shall add some splatters. If you're worried about hitting the word, then just place a piece of card over your word, just so that you don't hit that. So you can just place that over your word if you wish. That's entirely, I didn't put the lid on that. That's entirely up to you. Just clean our non-stick craft sheet, just so that you can see our beautiful card. I just love how that's turned out. So let me just add this now to a black mat, because that will just make that pop a little bit more when you add it to the black mat. So we'll add that to the black mat. So let's just, oh yes, and there's some adhesive in here. This is the one that I keep saying is empty. And then I shake it a bit more and some more comes out. So we're just going to add that to our black mat. There we go, and you've got a completely single layer card. And what I mean by that is it has no dimension. It's got no cut out pieces at all. It's all one layer. Don't know why this has come out all over there like that. We're then going to add this to our 7-inch card blank. So let's add this to a 7-inch card blank. Just going to lift that. You see, I've just lifted that up, and let me show you, it's facing the wrong way. Always check which way your card is facing. It's so easy to put it on the wrong way, just like I've just done. Make sure that's all clean. So just make sure that that's all stuck down. You can add an insert with the clematis if you wish. I'm just making sure my card's clean. And let's just if I grab my gel pen, there it is. You can also sort of add a little shadow of white around your word a little bit, just so that you're sort of carrying on the touches of white. Sort of, it's there but it isn't, if that makes sense. Just some little touches of white. There we go. Not that I'm being fussy, but let me hold that up for you. Just added some little touches of white just around the wording as well. And then I just want to add a touch of shading just down here. So I'm going to add a little touch of shading just down here. Let's add a little bit of water. And what I would suggest you do is just wait until the card has completely dried before you try and erase any pencil marks. Just give that a little fact, I'm just going to add a little bit more. That's better. Just to add a little bit of shading around there. Let's just blend that out to nothing. Just so that you can see our card. Let's bring in the previous card, just so that you can see. There's the previous one. And then here is the second version. Just so that you can see that you can take the same techniques and change it a little bit. It's worth just experimenting with colours, experimenting with placement. It really is worth it. And it's also worth going back and sort of adding your touches of white. Don't forget, if you've missed little areas, just to go back in and make sure that you've added those. But go back in and do add the white touches. But doesn't it look completely different to this one? Looks completely different because we applied the inks differently, still with the braid but in a different way, and slightly different colour with the cracked pistachio. Was it cracked pistachio? Yes, cracked pistachio, but just slightly different, and I love that. So I hope you've enjoyed the step-by-steps and you'll give that a go, and I'll come back and we might do a smaller version. So love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.